Part 1. The Perfect Family. Shattered. I met Lisa when we were both young, both full of hopes and dreams about the future. I thought I had found my soulmate, someone whose soul matched mine perfectly. We married, and for 6 years, I believed that I had built a life that was steady, secure, and complete. We had 3 children, including our twins, who became the center of our universe. Our home was in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the streets were lined with neatly trimmed lawns, and the hum of daily life was peaceful, comforting. I thought we were untouchable, like our little bubble was impervious to the troubles that might plague other families. In those early days, everything felt perfect. I'd come home from work, and Lisa would greet me with her radiant smile, her voice carrying through the house with light-hearted jokes about dinner or the kids. There was always warmth in our home. Laughter, the soft sounds of our twins' cribs creaking as they slept, our oldest trying to toddle around the living room. I would kiss Lisa, tell her about my day, and feel like everything was exactly as it should be. It was simple happiness, but it was ours. But like a storm that appears out of nowhere, everything began to change. The signs were subtle at first. A few weeks after the twins' second birthday, I noticed that Lisa's smile, which used to light up the hallway when I got home, started to fade. The warm, joking complaints about the diapers became more frequent. The days started feeling longer, the laughter less frequent. It wasn't obvious at first, but I could feel the shift in the air. I convinced myself it was just the stresses of life. Parenting, bills, work. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then came that night. The night everything began to unravel. I remember it clearly, as if it were etched into my memory. We were sitting together on the couch, physically next to each other, but emotionally distant. The TV was on in the background, playing some late-night comedy show that neither of us was really watching. Lisa looked over at me, her eyes catching mine for just a second. There was something in her expression that I couldn't place, something that set my nerves on edge. "Grant," she said, her voice a bit too casual. "There's something I've decided to do." Her tone was light, almost nonchalant, but it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Lisa only spoke like that when she was about to tell me something important. Something she was determined to do, regardless of how I felt. I muted the TV, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling in my stomach. "What is it, Lisa?" I asked, my voice already on edge. She smoothed a dark strand of hair behind her ear, the way she always did when she was about to make a serious decision. "I'm going to be Sarah's surrogate." I blinked, trying to process what she had just said. "What do you mean?" I asked, the words barely coming out as my heart started racing. Lisa met my gaze, her voice steady, but her eyes avoiding mine. "Sarah can't have a baby. She's tried IVF multiple times, but nothing worked. The doctor suggested a surrogate. And because Sarah and I have the same DNA, I'm the perfect candidate. I've already spoken to the clinic." For a moment, I was frozen. I couldn't understand what I was hearing. Surrogacy for Sarah. It didn't make sense. I stared at her, trying to read her face. But she was calm. Too calm. "You've already done this behind my back?" I asked, my throat tightening. She nodded, her expression firm. "I knew you'd freak out. This is something I've already decided. Sarah's my twin, Grant. She's been through hell trying to have a baby, and I can't stand seeing her suffer. Kevin and I have talked about it, and I'm certain this is what I want to do." "Kevin and you talked about it," I repeated, the anger bubbling up in my chest. "You've already made a decision like this without talking to me, without asking how I feel." Lisa's eyes flashed with irritation. "Grant, this is my body, my choice. I don't need your permission to do this. I hoped you'd support me, but I knew you wouldn't. This is important to me." The words were like a slap in the face. I was numb, unable to speak at first. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, let me get this straight, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. You're going to carry another man's child under our roof, and you think I'm just going to sit back and pretend everything's fine? Lisa set her phone down, crossing her arms. If you love me, you'll support me. I'm doing this for Sarah. Grant, she's family. You should understand that. Respect, I repeated, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. You don't show respect by blindsiding your husband with a decision that impacts our marriage. You're not just making a choice about your body. You're making a choice about our family. She stood up, her fists clenched. Sarah is family too, and I'm saving her. If you can't see that, maybe I've overestimated you. Her words were like a punch to the gut. Overestimated me, I said, my voice rising. Lisa, if you go through with this, it's going to tear us apart. Her expression faltered for just a moment, but then she walked past me, shoulders stiff. Then maybe we're not as strong as I thought we were. I stayed behind, seething with the anger. My chest was tight and my heart was racing. This wasn't just a simple disagreement. This was a fundamental breach of trust. Lisa had made a decision that didn't just affect her. It affected us, our marriage, our family. And I couldn't just stand by and accept it. Part 2, a broken partnership. The days that followed were tense. Lisa continued to talk openly about the surrogacy process. Doctor's appointments, medication schedules, the embryo transfer. She spoke about it as though it were nothing more than a casual part of our lives, like planning a vacation or buying groceries. But to me, it was a life-altering decision that had been made without my consent. Each time she mentioned it, I felt sick. I couldn't even look at the fertility medications she had brought home. Every time I saw her going through the process, it felt like a betrayal all over again. How could she be so casual about it? As if it didn't affect me at all. She hadn't just ignored my feelings. She had ignored the fact that we were supposed to make decisions together, as a team. Then came the day I found a box from the fertility clinic in our fridge. Inside were vials of medication, syringes, and instructions. It was like she had completely removed me from this part of our lives. The thought of her carrying another man's child under our roof was unbearable. Lisa, I said, my voice cold as I pointed to the box. What is all this? She glanced at me, almost dismissively, and shrugged. Hormone treatments. I need them to prepare my body for the embryo transfer. You didn't think this warranted a conversation? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. We're past conversations, she said flatly. I'm moving forward with this. I've already made my decision. I could feel the anger building in my chest again. You're ignoring me. You're pushing me away. And you don't even care. She rolled her eyes. Stop being so dramatic. It's just 9 months. And then I hand the baby over to Sarah. It's not like I'm replacing our children with another one. I stared at her, my heart breaking. You don't understand, I said quietly. If you go through with this, I won't stay in this marriage. I can't. I won't. Lisa's gaze hardened. And she crossed her arms. Then leave. You're free to leave if you can't handle my decision. I was numb. Pride, I repeated, barely able to speak. This isn't about pride, Lisa. This is about partnership. This is about trust. And you destroyed it. Part 3. The unraveling of everything. The days following Lisa's declaration were tense and unbearable. I couldn't escape the fact that everything was slowly falling apart around me. Every time I looked at her, every word she said felt like another brick being placed in the wall that was steadily growing between us. I could no longer remember the woman I had married. The woman who once made me feel like the luckiest man in the world was now a stranger. Someone whose decisions were no longer shared with me, whose loyalty I was no longer certain of. Our conversations, once so easy and full of laughter, became strained and short. Lisa spoke of doctor's appointments, fertility drugs, and schedules, as if the surrogacy were simply a matter of fact, as if we were still partners. But with every word, it was clear that I was no longer a part of the decision-making process. Every time she talked about the surrogacy, it felt as if she was reminding me that I was no longer her priority. It was that night, just a few days after her announcement, that I came home to find the fertility clinic's box sitting on our kitchen table. Vials of medications, syringes, and paperwork scattered everywhere. My mind was racing, and I couldn't breathe for a second. I had been trying so hard to hold it together, but seeing this so blatantly on display, seeing what she was doing, made it feel all the more real and all the more painful. I stood frozen in the doorway for a long moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. The house felt eerily quiet, the walls pressing in on me. Lisa was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a packet of papers with a look of determination on her face. It was almost as if she was expecting me to just accept this, like I was supposed to understand that this was happening, no matter how I felt. "What is all this?" I asked, my voice low but thick with the anger I could no longer contain. Lisa glanced up at me, nonchalantly. "Hormone treatments," she said. Her voice so casual, it made my stomach twist. "I need to start them, so my body will be ready for the embryo transfer." I felt my heart race. "You didn't think this warranted a conversation?" I asked again, my voice rising despite myself. "I already told you," she said, brushing it off. "We're past conversations. I'm moving forward with this. I don't need your permission." "Don't need my permission." The words were like a slap in the face. "You've already made this decision, and you never thought to ask me how I felt. I'm your husband, Lisa. I'm the father of our children. You didn't think I had a say in this." She met my gaze, her eyes hardening. "You always overthink things. This is about Sarah, and you should understand that. I'm doing this for her, for family. Family." My mind was spinning. The words felt hollow, meaningless. Lisa wasn't doing this for our family. She was doing this for Sarah. And by doing so, she was disregarding the very family she had built with me. She was placing Sarah's desires above everything we had worked for. "I can't just sit by and watch you carry someone else's child," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't pretend this is okay. This isn't just about a pregnancy, Lisa. This is about our marriage, our family." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "I thought you would be supportive. You should be proud of me for helping my sister. I don't want to be proud of you for doing something behind my back," I shouted, my frustration spilling over. "This isn't just about you and your sister. This is about me, too. This is about our family. How could you make such a huge decision without even talking to me?" She stood up, her fists clenched. "If you can't understand that, then maybe we're not as strong as I thought. Maybe we never were." I stood frozen, the words stinging like a slap. Maybe we weren't as strong as she thought. Maybe I had been blind all these years, believing that we could weather anything together. But now, standing in front of me, was a woman who had betrayed me, who had made a choice that would destroy everything we had worked for. The night ended in silence, but the damage had been done. It wasn't just about the surrogacy. It was about everything else. The broken trust, the realization that we were no longer partners, that Lisa's loyalty to me had faded. Part 4. The final straw. Over the next few days, things only became more unbearable. I couldn't stand the sight of the fertility medications, the syringes, the constant talk of appointments and schedules. Lisa spoke of these things with such nonchalance, as if They were no more significant than picking up groceries. I had tried to stay calm, tried to hold it together, but every conversation felt like another wound being torn open. I had never felt so alone in my own home. Then, 2 nights after our argument, I came home to find something that pushed me over the edge. A box of medications from the fertility clinic was sitting on our kitchen counter, as if it were just another part of our daily routine. Vials, syringes, and instructions. My chest tightened, and I felt sick to my stomach. She had completely disregarded my feelings. I asked her again, my voice shaking with anger. "Lisa, what's all this?" She glanced at me, nonchalant as ever. "Hormone treatments," she replied, almost as if it were no big deal. I needed to start them to prepare my body for the embryo transfer. It felt like the final straw. I had told her how much this hurt. I had begged her to reconsider, but it didn't matter. She was doing this anyway, and I was left to deal with the consequences. I felt like I was losing her, losing everything we had built, and I couldn't just stand by and let it happen. I made a decision that night, a decision that would change everything. I contacted a lawyer. When Lisa found out that I had reached out to a lawyer, she exploded. She stormed into the living room, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice trembling with fury. "You think it's acceptable to rush to a lawyer and start divorce proceedings behind my back?" I stood my ground, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the fury rising within me. "I told you what would happen if you went through with this. You went behind my back, used our finances without my consent, and now you expect me to just accept it. I'm done being disregarded." Her eyes filled with tears. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger. "Grant, we can fix this. You just need to accept that I'm doing this. Then we can move on." I shook my head. "No, Lisa, there's no fixing this. You've already destroyed us." That was the moment I realized our marriage was beyond repair. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. We were no longer partners. We were strangers, living under the same roof, pretending for the sake of our children. Part 1: Consequences and the Aftermath. The weeks after I contacted the lawyer were among the most challenging of my life. I was living in a house that once felt like home, but now it was just a place I had to exist in. Every day felt like a battle against my own emotions. The weight of betrayal, the grief over the broken trust, the anger that wouldn't seem to go away, all of it weighed heavily on me. I could no longer look at Lisa without feeling the void between us grow wider. The woman I married, the woman I had loved, seemed so far removed from the one sitting across from me every day. Our house, once filled with warmth and laughter, was now cold. The children could sense it, too, though they were too young to fully understand what was going on. They could see that something was wrong, and they asked questions. Questions that broke my heart. "Why don't you and Mom sit together anymore at dinner? Why do you and Mom fight all the time?" What was I supposed to say? The truth that their mother had chosen to bring another man's child into our home without even consulting me. That she had decided to disregard me, to disregard our family, in the name of helping her sister. In the weeks leading up to the divorce hearing, I tried to keep everything as normal as possible for the kids. I didn't want them to suffer because of our mistakes, but it was hard. So very hard. The tension between Lisa and me was palpable, and I knew that there was no going back. We were living under the same roof, but emotionally, we were worlds apart. And so, the day of the divorce hearing arrived. The divorce hearing, a final step. I walked into the courtroom, my heart a mixture of anger and something else. Was it relief? After everything that had happened, I was done. I didn't know if I would ever forgive Lisa, but I was certain that I could no longer live in the emotional turmoil that her actions had caused. Lisa, pale and exhausted, sat at one table with her lawyer. I could see the baby in her arms, the product of her decision to become a surrogate for Sarah. It was a bitter reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Sarah and Kevin sat in the gallery, avoiding my gaze. I didn't care. They had their child, and I had lost my marriage. The judge listened carefully as Lisa's lawyer tried to portray me as an uncaring, heartless husband. They painted me as the villain who abandoned his pregnant wife, who wasn't there for her. But I wasn't just a villain. I was a man who had been blindsided, betrayed by the woman I loved. And for the first time, I felt like the truth was on my side. My lawyer presented the facts. Lisa's unilateral decision to proceed with the surrogacy using our finances without my consent and forging my signature. The timeline was clear, and it painted a picture of deception, disregard, and betrayal. Lisa had not just disregarded me. She had chosen a path that destroyed our family and our marriage. The judge's verdict came quickly, and when she spoke, it was with a firm tone that left no room for doubt. Lisa had acted in direct opposition to the partnership that marriage was supposed to represent. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me primary custody of our children. Lisa would have visitation rights, but the court acknowledged that she had breached the trust in our marriage, and that could not be ignored. The baby, the one that was supposed to be a symbol of family, was now a reminder of everything I had lost. The judge also ordered that Lisa repay the funds she had taken from our joint account to fund the surrogacy, further emphasizing her lack of transparency. The aftermath, rebuilding life. When the hearing ended, Lisa approached me in the hallway, tears staining her face. She had been crying throughout the trial, but now, standing in front of me, her tears seemed to hold more than just sadness. They were tinged with something deeper. Regret, guilt, perhaps, but for me, it was too late. I had heard enough. Grant, she said, her voice shaky. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to come to this. I made a mistake. But I never thought you would cut me off like this. Please, I'm sorry. I stood there, cold and unmoving. I had tried to warn her. I had begged her to stop. But now I was beyond the point of no return. You put Sarah and Kevin's needs ahead of ours. I said, my voice hard. That wasn't a mistake. Lisa, that was a betrayal. And you can't undo it. Her tears continued to fall, but they no longer affected me. I had been down that road with her before, pleading, begging, hoping she would listen. But she never did. And now I was done. I just wish you could forgive me, she said, her voice cracking. I shook my head. Forgiveness doesn't come that easily. You destroyed everything. You chose your sister's child over your family. There's no coming back from that. With that, I turned and walked away. The new normal. Moving on. The weeks after the hearing were strange. Lisa moved in with her parents, and I kept the kids in our home. The house felt quieter, emptier, yet there was a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in months. The anger that had once consumed me started to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. I wasn't happy about how everything had gone down, but I was finally free. Lisa visited the children, but she was a shadow of the woman I had once known. Every time she picked them up, she looked at me as though waiting for something, an apology, perhaps, but I had nothing left to give her. The woman who had betrayed me was no longer the person I loved. I had to let her go, and with it, all the illusions of the past. The kids, thankfully, adjusted quickly. They were happier, calmer. We didn't have the constant tension that had once filled the house. And while I was still heartbroken over the loss of our marriage, I found comfort in knowing that I could be there for them. That was what mattered now. Lisa, on the other hand, had to face the consequences of her actions. I had nothing to do with how she struggled. Her relationship with Kevin remained rocky, and while they had their child, the reality of raising a baby under these circumstances wasn't as easy as she had hoped. The financial strain, the emotional toll, it was all too much, and as the months passed, I realized that her path, the one she had chosen, had led her down a road she wasn't prepared for. Final thoughts. The price of betrayal. Looking back, I don't regret my decision to stand up for myself, to demand respect, and to take control of my life again. Was it cruel? Perhaps, but sometimes cruelty is the price of dignity. Lisa made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. She wanted to help her sister, but in doing so, she tore our family apart. The divorce wasn't just a legal matter. It was a final acknowledgement that we couldn't move forward together. And as for me, I moved on. I regained my freedom. I found peace in the chaos, and I learned to prioritize my children and my own well-being. Sometimes life doesn't give you the closure you want, but it does give you the opportunity to rebuild. I did that, piece by piece, and I'm stronger for it. This final part concludes the emotional journey of betrayal, anger, and the painful process of moving on. The story explores the complex emotions involved in a breakdown of trust, the consequences of selfish actions, and the eventual healing and reclaiming of one's life. The husband, while justified in his anger, finds a path to peace and stability after the devastation, learning valuable lessons about respect, self-worth, and the importance of family.